obviously something has to change, because in the 1970s, the prevalence of childhood obesity between the ages of 2 and 19 was around 5%. And as of the 2021 to 2023 range, obesity prevalence is about 21%. Something's got to change. And what we were doing isn't working. What we're doing now, is this going to change the world? Is this going to set our childhood obesity rates straight? This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. With me today, I am so excited. We got everybody back around the table. It's been a minute since we gotten to do this. DiMatteo, PharmD. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. This is Joey DiMatteo, PharmD, board-certified clinical nutritionist. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. And Mike number 4, because there's now 4 of us, Josiah Schweinberg, engineer extraordinaire. What's up, my friend?
I always appreciate the extraordinaire tag.
Yeah.
Well earned.
Yeah. It's the official title. I think you get to put that on your business card.
Oh,
yeah.
Are business cards a thing anymore?
No. I'm Tyler Andrews. I'll be the host. And we have a bunch of fun stuff today. Specifically, we are going to talk about this year, 2025, 2026, is the return of the Presidential Fitness Challenge. Do either of you remember doing the fitness challenge?
Honestly, I don't.
You don't?
No.
In high school?
Yeah.
I can't remember if we had to do a fitness challenge or if it was something like with like ROTCs.
Well, that was a different thing.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I definitely did it. I'm assuming, Dante, you have no memory of it?
I remember the sit and reach.
Oh, do you?
We thought that was funny.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
V
At
sit
a
and
young
reach.
age. We're like, what is this? What could this possibly be testing?
And then
Remember
the girls
what
do
grade
it.
you were in?
It was definitely 5th or 6th grade. I think I remember talking about it.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't.
Yeah. All the boys would make fun of it, and then the girls would do it, and you'd be like, whoa.
In the flex arm
How is that possible? Yep.
Because occasionally that comes up in jest,
Yeah.
like, hey, we're talking about back squats and this and that. And then it's like, well, what about your flex
What's
arm
your
hang?
flex arm hang time?
That's the real metric we need to know.
So the presidential fitness test was around for a long time, several decades, 50 years-ish. And then President Obama changed it. And instead of having it be so competitive, the goal was to have it be more of an individual improvement thing. And now, I guess a decade or so on after that, President Trump is reinstating the old school presidential fitness challenge. That's the short version. Dante, tell me the details. What is going on?
The original test came from a study done by Krauss and Weber. It was actually called the Krauss-Weber test.
Okay.
And it was more of an assessment, so it looked at, I don't know, basically flexibility in kids, essentially. There wasn't a really demanding physical kind of performance aspect to this.
Strength element.
Yeah. But this was in the 50s, and there were about 4,000 subjects in the study. And what they found was that the kids in the United States performed much worse than the kids in Europe.
Oh.
So I think it was something like 8% of kids in Europe, 8 or 9%, had a passing, or excuse me, only 8 or 9% of those kids failed, whereas there was some astronomical number in the American population that I think it was
like
about over 50% of American children failed at least one of the minimum tests that were essentially just trying to look at strength and flexibility. So the test that eventually came from that it's not the same test, which is, critical to distinguish.
Yep.
But this was, you think about the era that the United States and the rest of the world was in at that time. This fitness gap was almost like a sign of a national weakness.
Yeah.
And a threat to compete against the national powers at the time. This was the Cold War era. The Soviet Union, tensions were high, and America was falling behind in the Olympic medal race. So there was a lot here versus just, hey, we're concerned about this looming obesity crisis and we're concerned about all these chronic diseases. No, this was more of like hey, we need to be able to puff our chest out, and this next wave of kids, if they're failing this test, that's theoretically the next wave of soldiers that we might need in a military setting. And all that sort of thing. That was at least my kind of interpretation of maybe the sentiment at the time.
And the draft was still a thing at the time. And this would have been relatively early in the US as the ultimate superpower. Obviously the Cold War is the big stand. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that element of it. Okay.
Yeah, and JFK wrote that letter. It's called like the Soft American.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was right around that time. And then,
So even before then, because it seemed like, just based on the timeline that I saw, Eisenhower unfortunately gets wrapped up into that same sentiment when really it was just during Eisenhower's presidency that he said he was just kind of calling action to this fitness gap. Like, hey, there's definitely something we need to do here. He brought together different council of people to say some experts in the field. And it, for him, the general consensus was like, hey, I'm not so much concerned about performance per se, but there's something here. There's something about the industrialization, the kind of the advances in technology that our kids are commuting less. They are playing outside less. There's less manual labor. The jobs have changed. And now maybe, as compared to Europe, we're seeing more of a stark contrast. And, I think his intentions, although I'm not a historian, it seemed like his intentions were a little pure from the angle that Kennedy came at it from.
Okay.
So Kennedy comes in, he's ex-military, everybody loves him, and it's more of this intensity behind the changes that he wants to make. So yeah, he gets an article published in Sports Illustrated titled "The Soft American" or "The Soft America," and just further highlights how big of a problem this is. But again, not so much in the sense that it's we're on this path to chronic disease. It was just more like, hey, there's a weakness here that we can't show.
Yeah, he said our increasing lack of physical fitness is a menace to our security.
Wow. I mean, it's hard for note. I would be shocked if anybody was prescient enough to say in the 50s or even early 60s, hey, no guys, this is going to be a real big problem in a few years or a few generations. Cool. Okay. So it's instituted and it doesn't turn out exactly quite like it was originally intended, or like the original impetus was to try and help kids get fitter, right?
Exactly. And not to go into too much detail on the Krauss-Weber test, but this test that was used in that original study that scared everybody in America, all the test was a sit up with straight legs, sit up with bent knees, leg raises with straight legs, upper body lift, lower body lift, and a forward bend to basically test the flexibility in your hips and in your hamstrings.
So just a single one of each of those.
I mean, this was like basically, I don't know if it was 10 seconds or you had to reach 10 inches or what the specific metrics were, but by all accounts, I mean, this is very, very basic testing. So sure, for people to receive failing grades on these, that is concerning.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know. What if you took these same kids and, they did some of the running components instead.
Yep.
There were kids playing sports and there were other things going on that maybe these tests, I mean, these are like flexibility tests, really. I just, looking at how current assessments are done and even how the test has evolved, it just kind of makes you wonder that maybe we gave this a little too much credence. I think a change needed to be made.
Sure.
But it was like, oh my goodness, this is so bad. And it was very, very basic of test. This was like a minimum test that I don't know. And the kids were 6 to 16, I believe. So
that's a big range too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe these kids could have done a push-up. What if they could have done a push-up, but they weren't super flexible? What would that constitute? So again, at least I think this was an important launch point, but again, important to distinguish that it wasn't like with the presidential fitness test or the presidential challenge that they implemented the Krauss-Weber test. It was just, there were ideas born from, what was originally looked at.
And sure, that makes sense in the sense that you go, hey, we see this gap. We don't have enough fitness here. Mm-hmm. Let's implement some things that we know will improve fitness. Well, that's sit-ups and push-ups and pull-ups and running. And those are the basics of that sort of thing. So that's the test that gets put in place. But it sounds like our national pride got pricked and we perhaps swung into high gear a little more than this test necessarily dictated. But at the same time, now with the benefit of 60 years looking back, maybe that was a good thing to some extent.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so from Eisenhower's era, again, he just more or less established that, hey, we need to start talking about this. JFK comes in, really like puts his fist down, and then LBJ comes in, formalizes it further. And then that's where the Presidential Physical Fitness Award program came about in 1966.
Okay.
And so this is where, I think most people begin to recognize the gold stars and the patches and the performance. And I had to do this test and watch my friends do it. And then I had to do it, And so at that point, the test shifted to much more different aspects. So the boys did pull-ups, the girls did the flexed arm hang, so a little bit of like a modified pull-up essentially. There were still sit-ups with flexed legs, and it was basically a 60-second challenge, and this was just to see how many these kids could do. There was a shuttle run. So you imagine that you had to run down, pick up an item, run back down, grab the last item. Looking at more change of direction. Yeah. Really? So
agility.
Yeah. So agility. And then there was a standing broad jump in some of these tests, a 50-yard dash as well. So like pure sprint, like pure speed tests essentially. And also a movement that was later removed, which was the softball throw for distance.
Critical for everyday life.
Yeah. And then also the 600-yard run and walk, which was also another endurance test. Again, a little bit better of a snapshot looking at cardiovascular health and efficiency. You think about these tests and it just makes you wonder that were these really, like, what was this really going to show? Like, my initial reaction was that, hey, if there were kids that were lucky enough and fortunate enough and in the right environment to be playing sports and to, I guess if we take a more personal sort of emotional side to all of this, you look at these kids who were, again, fortunate enough to have the opportunities to do these things. Well, of course, they're going to come in and probably score better on some of these baseline tests where, it's like the social determinants sort of may have gotten neglected in this era. And a lot of maybe the decrements and the lack of performance in some of these early tests were probably more, especially in younger kids. Yeah. I guess, and as they age, was more of a reflection of maybe how they grew up, what their genetic, like, were they gifted or not, essentially. I mean, sprinting, really, throwing, seriously,
it's like reflect what we already knew about them.
Yes. What is this? What is this really assessing? You're just going to flesh out the kids who already have been told that they're good athletes, and it's going to kick the other kids to the side and say, well, obviously you need work. And it's kind of like, well, no crap.
Yeah. So. Another one of the things that strikes me in that, especially if you're talking about middle school age range, kids hit puberty at different times.
Right.
And a kid that's a couple years further down that track, just because they started puberty earlier, is going to have a radically different experience doing those tests than the younger kid or the physiologically younger, less developed kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys see that all the time in like middle school sports and stuff, where you see the one kid on the basketball team that you're like, that kid's in middle school? Oh my gosh.
He has a mustache.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Was he held back 4 years? So that's an interesting element to this that I hadn't thought about, the competition of it.
But is it solely just like peer to peer? Like that's where the rub or the tension is. So like under the Obama administration, when they changed it to be more, it wasn't as much of a competition.
Yeah, it was more, and it was more private, I would say. and as opposed to the way some of these other people were classes were testing.
So the tension point is it's like a peer-to-peer. Now it's more of a competition, and some kids are more gifted, and like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it was more standardized before, and now it was more about individual improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So the test stays more or less the same for the next few decades. And then in 2012, President Obama overhauled or radically changed the way that this was done. What happened then?
So there was a huge shift, again, maybe back to some of the Eisenhower sentiment, I think, that gets glossed over in a lot of what I've read. And this was essentially just something that adopted a more holistic, health-focused, and less competitive approach, as Joey basically alluded to. So what they ultimately did was establish another test, which is what I know as the fitness gram. And with the fitness gram, this was, the initiative that the Obama administration put forth was that we get this, we don't force all the schools to adopt this, is what I understood, but we get it out there to as many as possible. The goal was to have like 50,000 schools, nationwide, switch over to a program like this. And I think, again, I was too young to really to feel what this was like. But in looking at the actual aspects of the test, like it's still, you can't get away from testing a physical, characteristic, if you will. So they, instead of doing a 50-yard sprint or a 600-yard test, there was something that most people know as like a meme at this point, and that's the pacer test.
Okay.
Or the fitness gram beep test. And so this is where you run back and forth. A lot of sports teams even, implemented this, and the beep gets shorter each time. So it beeps, you run, and then once you get to the other side, you wait for the next beep, then you run to the other side. So it's about 20 meters, and the beeps get closer in duration. And if you're past a certain, if you make it a certain amount of lengths on the course or whatever, then that constitutes a higher level of aerobic capacity. Okay. Or they also used to look at the 1 mile run, which I do remember doing in gym class. And they also had walking tests, I think, to be able to meet students where they stand.
Were, sure.
And then they also still, again, more of like a medicalized approach. They looked at BMI, and also some aspects of this consisted of, some places even implemented skin fold tests to look at body fat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then they still had the muscular strength and flexibility components. So push-ups, sit-ups, trunk lifts, modified pull-ups, flex arm hang. They still did the sit and reach, which I remember stuck around. And then there was also some sort of shoulder stretch that measured flexibility in the shoulder joint. So again, with looking at how much or how little a student needs as far as physical activity, you can't really avoid some sort of test, right? I mean, even if we look at what VO2 max, shows and corresponds to, it's still VO2 max is not like a blood sample,
right,
that you just see.
Yeah.
It's something that is correlated with a physical performance. And so it's just inherent that there will still be some gamification or performance aspect to these tests. It is just unavoidable. Now, in the original era, we'll call it, the pre-Obama initiative, it seemed as though there was unless you had like a really good gym teacher or a really good curriculum, or you were just lucky, there was very little follow-up with what was done with these tests.
That is my memory. Absolutely.
So, so you just, again, there was standardization. You're the 90th percentile, and here's your ribbon. It is. Like, here's your ribbon, or your 95th percentile. There's your patch. And you just wore it with a badge of honor, like you arrived. You know what I mean? And if you were somebody who wasn't fortunate enough to receive that, there wasn't necessarily this push to involve your parents or your guardians or whatever the case to begin to build upon these characteristics. I mean, these are not fixed characteristics that they were testing, right? It's running and pushing and pulling, and sure, there are certain people who are going to be better or worse at a given test. But this was not like the final say in your physical capability. So kids doing the test in those eras, they were done a disservice as far as the lack of follow-up went. And my understanding with the FitnessGram era, we'll call it the beep test era, is that at least there were tests and retests. And I believe that if there was areas of concern, that this was more brought to the parents' attention, and there were things that the parents could then collaborate with the teachers to begin to improve those tests.
Okay, so theoretically, creating a pathway forward, a way to improve these things for the kids, so that there's follow through, like you said. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. The other thing that's important to mention with like the Obama era, I guess we'll call it, physical activity programs, were that it was multifaceted. This wasn't like, hey, we're just going to like hang our hat on this gold standard test. This test or this FitnessGram or these components of the test, they're one small piece within this whole, picture of things we're actually concerned about. Because now at this point, we're concerned with the, rising rates of obesity, rising rates of early onset diabetes and type 2 diabetes later in life, all these things that were beginning to run, at all-time highs, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so this was marked a shift in the foods that were in schools and after school programs, and not just this test and gym class. And while the PE curriculum is essential, because you have kids at school, that wasn't the end all be all.
Right.
They did their best to implement things that allowed kids to get up and moving during school and so on and so forth. But again, as we look at the kind of where we stand today, as far as those obesity rates and, higher rates of chronic disease that are largely, preventable chronic diseases, and also the levels of activity that we're actually doing into adulthood,
right,
we know that we still have not been able to get a grip on those things. And to me, it doesn't really reflect a failure per se of Kennedy's era, or a failure of Eisenhower's sentiment, or a failure of Obama's era per se. It doesn't really seem like any of those things move the needle on what's happening, because the issue is so big and so complex. And it's much bigger. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, but it's much bigger than just this baseline test that, 6 and 16-year-olds are being given in school. This is a tiny sliver between all of that. But again, it just boils down to the issue is, what kind of seeds are we planting with kids in gym class at impressionable ages, and so that's the crux of it. But I did want to mention, I guess, one tidbit, and it was that 3/4 of individuals in the United States are still not meeting the physical activity guidelines.
Wow.
So 75% of people, are not, and it's the numbers even lower, as we've mentioned, in those reaching the resistance part of the guidelines as well, the resistance training part. And so we're not doing a good job of encouraging that early in life. There's even some of the data that came out of the Obama era of physical activity initiatives was that, although maybe they didn't move the needle on some of these numbers, and the rates of obesity have continued to climb, and they're projected to continue to climb. But they noticed that there was a little rift, or a little spot, that if they were able to intervene in kids as young as like 2, as far as physical activity exposure and just the importance of play and the fun surrounding it and those sorts of things, that they were able to maybe see a downtick in some of these, childhood rates of type 2 diabetes and obesity and such. And so it's really just, it's always the earlier you can intervene, the better. And then in something like this, it's like suddenly feels like 6 years old is, even when these tests might pop up for your child, is even too late as well.
And so just to close the loop here, the Trump administration now has brought back the original version of this, more or less.
That's my understanding. So unless somebody has more information, his proclamation or his executive order here is not real specific.
Right.
But he has, a task force of Triple H and
that's right,
Bryson DeChambeau and all these people and Annika Sorenstam or whatever, all these people involved, Lawrence Taylor. So he's got the experts in there on this one.
Look, I remember Hulk Hogan being at the White House, encouraging physical fitness.
Yeah, and so I know that's just a joke, but yeah, there's really no specifics on what they intend to do. So I think that they're just going to bring back the original test. You know what I mean? I highly doubt that. I view this as just like their hook. Like, hey, we're going back. Like,
we were weak. We've been weak for so long, and now we're back to being strong.
It's the same invigoration that I'm sure people may have felt with the Kennedy thing. There's probably some people that hated that, and there was also some people in such a militaristic era that were like, yes, that is what we need. And so there's something to that. I assume there's going to be an overhaul of some of these initiatives from post 2012. And I assume we'll have that laid out to us, in the future. But right now, are they going to do the Krauss-Weber test? I mean, there's just no way.
And obviously something has to change because it hasn't been working.
Right.
We made a change with the Obama administration,
which is what everybody can agree on.
Still not working.
Yeah.
We've had trouble hitting recruitment numbers in the military because not just because of a lack of enthusiasm, but because so many people are not physically fit enough to actually pass the basic test to get into the military, let alone after boot camp and all that stuff. So that the military had to start implementing volunteer training programs to get you into shape so that you could then join the military. That's a whole thing. So there is a huge issue here. I also pulled up some stats recently. In the 1970s, the prevalence of childhood obesity between the ages of 2 and 19 was around 5%. And as of the 2021 to 2023 range, obesity prevalence in that same age range is about 21%. So we've gone, more than a 4-fold increase in obesity in children. Something's got to change. And what we were doing isn't working. What we're doing now probably won't be the thing I think that's the thing. Is this going to change the world? Is this going to set our childhood obesity rates straight? Probably not.
Right. And also, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, the issue is, obviously we like the general sentiment.
Yep.
But the issue is, if you push kids to these standardized numbers or in some way you make, I don't want to say make them feel bad about themselves, but like Dante said initially, you're going to have the kids who already excel, meet those numbers, knock it out. And then you're going to have the kids that don't potentially. And it's a difficult balance because I know along with it was the Obama era type things and it was the participation trophy era, that stuff, it's where it's a tough balance. Because if you then say, we made these, we went from 20% success to 40, look what we made these kids do. If you make 8-year-olds do those things and they hate it, and what's their association going to be with fitness, with working out? They're going to start to have these negative connotations, but then you can't do nothing either. So it's just a really tough balance for me about what the details of this will be, because I think some combination of, we want some improvement and we have to have some numbers to show that, but at the same time, let's definitely have this be individualized. You want kids who are out of shape and inactive for whatever reason to start to gradually become more active so they can incorporate it into their life, not just suddenly just pass this test and then hate it again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's going to be the same amount of polarization between the two because of, because I remember, some of these things, I was so anxious because I wasn't super active
like you are now.
Well, yeah, you're right. I was just, chubby little kid, know? And I remember having such anxiety because there were kids in my grade who could run a mile in under 7 minutes and I'm huffing it out there, And so there'll be that. That's why I asked earlier, what is the tension point around this? Why is this making headlines? And a lot of it is, the trauma that it may have caused kids. Then they're reliving that now for their kids. And even like you said, the JFK with the soft America, I could imagine the Trump administration thinking the same thing. Like,
Yeah,
exactly.
the participation trophies and what that's just soft, and we need to get back to, and it's gonna polarize.
Yeah.
Two groups of people.
And that's one of the things that
Like everything
frustrates
else.
me about this is we all have the same goal, healthier kids. Like, that's a clear goal. And this should be a situation where we can all work together to go, what's the best way to make that happen? This didn't work. That didn't work. Okay, let's come up with something new. But as is often the case, the political element to it makes it just a landmine, a field of landmines, because anywhere you go, somebody's going to take it personally. Somebody's going to take it as an affront. Somebody's going to say, well, that's not in line with my politics. It's not about your politics. It's about healthy kids.
absolutely.
What's going to work? And if it works, great, let's keep it. If it doesn't work, let's throw it out and try something new.
Yeah. And the other difficult thing I know with my kids in their gym, they love it.
Yeah.
But they're not doing push-ups and sit-ups, for better or worse. I'm just saying what they're doing. They're
scooter races. And
they're on these little
dodgeball.
there's little scooter things they ride around, and they play kickball and they play tag, and they have all these different games that then Leo will come home and tell me about, and he loves gym. Now is, again, the fine balance is, well, can you do push-ups? Can you do sit-ups? Do you have long... but at the same time, you're trying to just introduce that physical activity can be fun.
Yes.
I try to take my kids to like a trampoline park and things like that, like just to get them like a
Boy, nothing
little
makes
bit
me feel
active.
old
And,
like being on a trampoline.
I know.
The knees. It's
Yes.
the knees.
Oh,
So
anyway,
I know that even without standardization of XYZ be able to do this, then it's hard to determine how well something's working.
Yeah.
But then when you add that in, you start to potentially turn the kids off, and that's what's difficult. This is not an easy. Again, we know the goal, but the implementation and the strategy is difficult.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love sports. I love fitness as a sport.
Right.
I'm like probably the most biased person that could have this conversation.
Yep.
But, I'm well aware that just doesn't, we just know based on behavioral studies and common sense, essentially, that just doesn't work for everybody, that creating an environment in gym class that feels like playing sports maybe isn't the right way. And I think that was just very much what was present in the kind of original era of this test. If these kids wanted to play sports, they could probably sign up for sports. So they shouldn't necessarily have to feel like they're walking into a competitive environment in school for something that's not really their choice.
Yeah.
Ultimately. So I guess that's kind of one of the last negative things I'll say. It's not to discredit the million stories and accounts that I read of people in the 70s and 80s and 90s being humiliated from these tests. Like, I feel badly about that. I mean, that's the huge reason why we're, ultimately talking about this.
Yeah.
But I want to mention an article from Steve Magnus.
Okay.
He is, as far as I can tell, he is the best guy. He's the go-to guy if you want to learn about endurance sports, but more specifically running. He is as good as it gets. He's fairly non-controversial. He walked the walk himself. He ran a 4-minute mile, around that time in high school. He was one of the top high school runners. And then he moved into academia and kind of covered all practical bases and science bases. So when it comes to things like this, I very much at least would, value an opinion like this.
Yeah.
And he spun it positive. He was the kid where he at an impressionable age, when he was exposed to this test, he didn't know what he was good at. He felt like he had no physical strengths. He didn't know. He failed at the sit and reach test and failed at this other test. But when he had to line up against his friends, he realized, oh my gosh, I am the fastest kid in the class. I'm the fastest kid in the school. I'm the fastest kid in the state. So for him, it was this launch point into something that became his career and in an arena where he's helping people. Not only with just the science and the performance aspect of things, but also how to, really structure your life to contain running, so he is a beacon for that sort of thing. And so for him to kind of spin it in a positive, and again, not to discredit these terrible experiences that people had, which were more likely an effect of the era that they were in, and a more likely an effect of the gym teacher that they had.
Oh yeah.
And that in the curriculum that the gym teacher found themselves in. And, it can get really, can really get lost in the weeds there as to why that experience, what it was.
Right.
Because not every school was this way. I mean, there's so many, just depend. It's like era specific, it's year specific, it's district specific.
Having a bad math
I mean,
teacher can
holy
make
heck.
you hate math.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
we could,
that doesn't mean
exactly.
math is
The
bad.
peers in your
Issues-
gym class can
Yeah.
throw off the entire experience that you
Right,
have.
right, and like standardized tests for academics, are they perfect in every way?
Right.
I don't know. Do kids feel humiliated when they have to change classes based on a maybe a metric that they tested in school? I don't. It's maybe not as glaring as a physical test, but like again, the point is you can make these sort of arguments where there is this like leaderboard-ish sort of performance-ish applying to schools track that we're all on, But the last thing I wanted to say about Magnus was just that, he points out that it's, again, this test allows us to have the conversation, but the real issue comes in when you start talking about the structure, maybe the curriculum of a lot of these physical education classes. And just directly from his article, he says that a simple test won't fix the state of American physical fitness, but it can spark a crucial conversation about the purpose of gym class. It starts with treating physical education like a real subject. Right now, only 15% of elementary students and 9% of middle school students are required to have at least 3 days of PE a week. And class sizes can reach up to an unmanageable 75 students per teacher.
Yeah.
So what if we, he says, what if we treat PE instead of glorified babysitting and we made it a core part of the curriculum, safe environment, et cetera? I feel like I've been hearing those things for years. And again, not every school is going to be exactly how he says it. I felt like I had a pretty, we did all types of things in gym,
so too.
And it's not all bad. Hey, I still like sports. I remember my gym teachers. It was a lot of fun, but my dad also, showed me the importance of exercising. Right. So I was I was maybe luckier than the average student too. And you have to be aware of that. But point being, there's still just a systemic issue that maybe if Trump approaches this, like, hey, the test, let's bait and hook everybody with this change in the test and going back to the old way. But there's like a massive overhaul here that needs to be done. And like Magnus said, students are required to have less than 3 days of PE a week. Like that alone is completely incongruent with what's recommended in the physical activity guidelines. For adults, it's 150 to 300 minutes a week of pretty serious aerobic exercise. It's lifting and training all major muscle groups 2+ times a week. There's no way that for kids who are in school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that it's possible to do that. Because then you're assuming that before school, they have the resources to plan for the thing that they're going to do after school. And then are they going to do the thing after school? Are their parents involved? Are they not involved? What area are they in?
Yep.
All these things that like the schools, it's like, that's the biggest opportunity. I don't know what the answer is. We can riff on it all day. But again, it's just, that's a prime example of it being incongruent with what's being recommended, because the assumption is that, well, they can go home and do these things.
Oh,
Not always the case.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
I appreciated this passion.
Yeah.
Talking out of two sides of the mouth almost.
Yeah.
Then the other side, I know before we had mentioned that, yes, you want it to be enjoyable and make it part of the routine. Then the other side, again, where the balance is tough, is that I feel that when kids accomplish something that they feel really good about it. And I know that's obvious, but what I'm trying to say is whether it's even chores, my kid never wants to do a chore. When he does it, he feels good and he's proud. And I had him do it. He goes and tells his mom. When, a kid can't run very well and they improve and they don't want to run, but they go out and they do it and they start to see some improvement. They take great pride in that. The problem is, I guess this applies to adults too, is the hump to get there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to make other adults do things. We can encourage, but with kids, you do have this window where you can nudge and you can give them a grade and you can say, hey, we're not going to have you do this 10 standard lap or this 10 standard push-up. We're going to have you at the beginning of the year run a lap and we'll time you. And we would like to see you improve. And then in 3 months, let's see where you run the lap. That's just an example, but I still think individualization is key. Yeah. But again, we've got this window where it's still educational. Little nudging is good. We're not going to have them have hopefully these terrible experiences, but the balance between, yes, maybe some gym days are a little more focused towards improving that lap and other gym days are more focused on kickball and running around.
Yeah.
I bet you could run it faster next time. Come on. You did it, real fast.
Yeah.
I bet you could do it faster next time.
Yeah.
Encouragement.
The difference between where I am today and where I want to be tomorrow is accepting that I'm not where I want to be tomorrow right now. And that's really hard. That's really hard for
avoiding
adults,
it.
let alone kids.
Were you quoting someone there, or was that a Tyler Andrews special?
No, it's mostly just I have no idea.
I like that. That was good.
That's an original.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah. When you say test, there's already anxiety. But when you have test in a certain subject, you have unit reviews, time to study. And I think that's what Dante's getting at with the PE class. Okay, well then give them time to prepare,
Right.
Yes.
Not knowing a whole lot about this, or if, someone didn't realize it was, PE test for schooling. When you hear presidential fitness test, I'm like, they're going to compare president's fitness level from past presidencies. This is just like Trump, to bring it back because he wants to prove, because during the presidential election, didn't he say something about being able to golf better than somebody else?
Oh, yeah.
Stuff. I'm like, my gosh.
They went back and forth, and
I'm like, here we go. He's going to bring back.
We're comparing all the
presidential fitness test.
I would not be opposed to implementing a presidential fitness test. Just in general, and even if it's not a pass-fail, if it's just okay, that's where you're at. All right, we should probably know that. What's your basic level of fitness, sir? That's not a political thing. That's just, we should all know that the person we're electing may or may not be able to run a mile.
Presidential fitness test.
I like it.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Josiah Schweinberg's got the new idea.
You've got quotes. I've got ideas for presidential fitness test.
Dante, this is a What's in the Bottle product segment, and I'm really excited about it because I actually use this every single day. I don't need you to tell me to use it. I love it. I'm into it, but I'm really excited about this changeover. This is a good one. What are we talking about?
So we've recently made an update to our main protein supplement offering, Pure Protein Essentials, which most people are familiar with, will now be known as Whey Protein Essentials.
And it's just the name change. That's the only thing that's changing.
That's it.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
The big change, we're going from a whey protein concentrate to a whey protein isolate. So you might be asking what the big deal is between these classifications. We've talked about this extensively in the past, but since we're making a big change, perfect time to revisit it. The big deal is that a concentrate versus an isolate comes down to the manufacturing process and basically the extent of the filtration. So you can look at it like this. The whey protein concentrate sort of covers the initial steps in the filtration process. It's still a quality source of protein, but it only contains around 70 to 80% of protein by weight. The remaining percentage will consist of things like fats and carbohydrates, primarily lactose being the main carbohydrate there. Also some minerals as well. Whey protein isolate, so referring to our new product, takes that filtration process a step further, more extensive, uses more advanced techniques like cross-flow microfiltration, for example. So this extra step basically just strips away what is mostly the non-protein components.
Okay.
The result is a product that's typically 90 to 95% protein by weight.
That's awesome. So a literally purer protein.
Yes.
Further away from the milk original that it starts out as, just protein with some flavor to make it taste good.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. So in addition to this, because of the higher concentration of the pure protein and by extension, a higher concentration of the amino acids per serving, this specific whey protein isolate offers several advantages. It's a cleaner profile across the board. You'll find negligible or minimal calories coming from other macronutrients, fats, and carbohydrates, especially when you're comparing it to the alternative. This makes it basically the most ideal choice for those closely monitoring their caloric intake or starting a particular diet.
Yeah.
It is a little more lactose friendly. So it's for those who might have some lactose sensitivities. pretty much a game changer. These isolate or hydrosolate forms that are also on the market. These are the two forms that we would often steer people towards, unless they wanted to go the plant protein route. But while the concentrate products can have upwards of 3.5 grams or more of lactose per 100 gram serving, isolates can typically contain 1 gram or less per 100 grams.
Wow. Okay.
And this is what significantly reduces the chance of some of those, unpleasant side effects.
Absolutely. I did not realize that. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that if you're lactose intolerant, you don't have to worry. I would still urge caution. But again, if you were to choose any sort of whey derived protein, this would be one to try. Yeah. We often see individuals do pretty well with these.
Okay. So that's the difference. That's fantastic. Who should be taking or considering a protein supplement like this?
So I think that question helps us address a common misconception that protein supplements and supplements like this, they're just for bodybuilders or elite athletes. While those individuals definitely benefit from additional protein,
sure,
the truth is protein supplementation is valuable for pretty much anyone, especially as we age.
Yep.
The primary point of a protein supplement is to help an individual meet their daily protein needs, especially when the whole food sources are often inconvenient or just insufficient. So we have to mention that we always recommend getting your protein from whole food sources like lean meats, poultry, fish, eggs, dairy, legumes, etc. But let's be honest, life happens. You need something quick. You want something that's still of a high quality, and ultimately to prevent you falling behind in terms of your protein intake on a daily basis. This is where a high quality option presents itself, like the Whey Protein Essentials. And ultimately what happens here, having something like this on hand is a direct way to improve your food environment, whether it's at home, at work, something you keep in your car, just something to, as soon as you're ready to reach for something not so ideal, if you have a scoop of this on hand, it can definitely serve as a nice middle ground as just one example.
You said so that you don't fall behind. Why is it so important to get the recommended amount of protein? Why is it important to do that and not just eat something else?
So protein intake is critical for a million different things: enzyme and hormone production, immune function, how we transport and store different molecules in the body, how we transport lipoproteins through the blood, etc., or how lipoproteins transport fat, for example. There's on a very small scale, and then more specific to this conversation, to really just ensure that you are setting yourself up to be able to build and repair tissues that are either insufficiently stimulated, or if you are exercising and you are looking to essentially rebuild what becomes micro damage from exercise and movement. And then also just ensuring that we set ourselves up for success as far as appetite regulation goes, weight management goes. So the list is endless, but I think to really center that response, I think we think of this in terms of supporting our lean tissue, trying to support our appetite, weight management, and also make sure that we have a really clean way to hit our macros, basically, if you want to look at it that way.
Okay, makes sense. So I'm not going to fall behind. How much do I need? How much is a normal person? What's the goal?
The recommendations will vary depending on where you look.
Of course.
Yeah. The recommendation that we had thrown around for years, that I'll often tell people if they just want something back of napkin, is the classic 1 gram per pound of body weight per day.
That's a lot.
It is. And, kind of emerging research and some of the experts in the field that honestly feel that may even be overkill for most people, and not ideal to kind of set a target for somebody who's just starting to increase their protein intake to have them shoot for something that is seemingly unattainable. So we, at this point, align with some of the other bigger camps on the matter, which would be about 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which then shakes out to 0.7 to about 1 pound 1 gram per pound of body weight.
0.7 grams per pound of body weight, roughly.
Yeah.
But so you're saying anywhere in that range, from
Yeah.
0.7 on up to a gram per pound
Yes.
is probably fine.
Yes. And so if you think of it like, hey, I'm eating 3 or 4 or 5 meals a day, you want to make sure you're anywhere from 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal. And you'll be getting that primarily from whatever the main protein source is. You're also going to pick some up depending on the carbohydrate source in your meal. So there are trace elements of protein that you'll if you tracked your intake in any capacity, you'll notice you'll pick some up here and there. Now, easy place to mention that there's 25 grams of protein per serving in the new product. So that right there kind of covers the base for a meal.
Yep.
The product in and of itself is insufficient to be a meal, but that's not what we're not what we're gearing this towards anyway. This is a snack. This is something to, as we'll discuss later, what you can use creatively in your dietary pattern.
All right, well, go ahead. How do we use it? So it's a powder.
Yeah. So beyond just mixing it in water or almond milk, it is pretty versatile in my opinion. So smoothies are the easiest way. I think Tyler and we've made many smoothies over the years.
Many.
Simply, you can blend it with fruits, vegetables, and your liquid of choice, whether that's almond milk or water, something that, just allows you to whatever meet your calorie goal for the meal.
Yep.
My current go-to as far as smoothies are concerned would be 75 grams of mangoes, 75 grams of peaches, both frozen. So half and half, not half and half.
Not half and half dairy.
Not half and half dairy. Although, I mean, it might help.
If you need the calories.
So 75 grams of each frozen mangoes and peaches, 300 grams of almond milk, a serving of almond butter, 32 grams, and then a scoop of this whey isolate, handful of ice, a little bit of cinnamon, comes out to about 400 or 500 calories. And this has been the one.
A little bit of cinnamon.
Yeah.
That's good.
In addition to the smoothies, you can, if you're feeling a little more ambitious, you can use this as a base in baking. You can add it to a pancake batter, a muffin mix, oatmeal. I mean, that's not my strong suit to come up with these sort of recipes, but I have 1 million that I could, forward to people that, my wife and I use or that we've used in the past.
The internet's full of options.
Yes, there's no shortage at this point. Also, oatmeal and yogurt mix-ins. So whether you just have more of a sweeter oatmeal breakfast or snack, I just mix the protein with a little extra water. I just mix the protein directly in there, throw some fruit in, and it's a little weird, to be thinking that I'm going to be eating whey protein powder, but it mixes well, provided you have enough liquid with it.
Yep.
Protein oats.
Yogurt.
Yes. You can mix it directly in your yogurt if you really want to bolster the protein.
Makes it some thick yogurt, but
it does. What else? The whole Ninja Creamy craze, the ice, like the homemade ice cream sort of thing.
So good.
It's exactly. In order to make it as healthy as possible, there has to be some sort of protein base to it. So whether you use a high protein milk, or
that's what I do.
Or you just mix our protein powder in the chocolate or vanilla into a lower calorie milk base, you can set yourself up for some pretty decent snacks. Now, I'm the first one to tell you that if you really want ice cream, just go get ice cream and don't go crazy. But there's 7 days in a week, and if you want to mix in a more nutritious option, this is the way.
I love all of these options. And honestly, one of my favorite ideas is something you've said before, which is just keep it in a blender bottle in the car so that you have an option if you need to. It's there, it's available.
Yep.
There's a million different protein powders out there. I know if you go to any big box store, you can find probably half a dozen or more different brands and then radically different flavors. Why would someone want to consider our Whey Protein Essentials over whatever's easily at hand?
Again, like you said, there are tons of good ones out there. Many of these meet some of these criteria, some don't. But what we're looking for and what this product has is a complete amino acid profile. Essentially, our body can't produce all the amino acids that we need. Okay. 9 of them are essential and must come from our diet. A truly high quality protein source contains all 9 of these amino acids, essential amino acids, and not just contain them, but in sufficient amounts and in the right proportion to allow for our body to utilize them properly. Think of it like the protein, once you consume it, is broken down into these building blocks, these amino acids, and that's ultimately what is utilized. That's ultimately what your muscles and tissues will utilize. So
Makes sense.
if you're missing different pieces of that, you are leaving some on the table. It's also highly digestible. So it's not only enough for just the amino acids to be present, but they also need to be efficiently broken down and absorbed. A highly digestible protein essentially just means that more of these valuable amino acids make it into the bloodstream. The last one would be bioavailability and utilization. So once absorbed, how well does your body actually use the amino acids?
Sure.
Modern protein quality scores, like the digestible indispensable amino acid score, something that measures exactly this, how efficiently, the absorbed amino acids are utilized for protein synthesis, basically, and other bodily functions. Whey protein isolates sit at the top of those lists, and this again falls right within that.
Very cool. So this is a well-rounded, well-developed, intentionally created and crafted product to meet a specific need.
Definitely. And remember, it's more than just additional protein by weight. You're investing in a high quality protein source that your body can effectively use, whether it's to support fitness goals or health related goals, performance, etc. This strives to cover all those bases. There are plenty of great protein products on the market. And as you mentioned, we don't, pretend that ours is the best one out there. But this is certainly as high quality as you can get. It's great tasting. It's pure. It's third party and batch tested. And, we can guarantee what's on the label is what's in the bottle. And we feel that this is a great add to your nutritional toolkit.
We fully stand behind it.
That's right.
That's awesome. Excellent. I'm going to go have some in just a minute. Thank you. That's what we got today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this, share it with somebody you know. Please, that is the biggest thing you can do to help us. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, give it a comment. Those are also fantastic. We respond to every single comment that gets dropped below. Big thanks, as always, to the folks who make this happen. If you want to find out more about this show, go to our website, askjoedimatteo.com, askjoedimatteo.com. You can find this show, past episodes of the show that started all this, the Ask Joe DiMatteo show. You can find all the products we recommend, the things to help you be healthier and live longer, all there at our website, askjoedimatteo.com. All right, that's it. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.